Welcome back to the lecture series. Today we are going to be discussing typography. Now, to get into typography, we're going to start with the anatomy of type. Now, I know that the book covers some of this. We're just going to review very briefly. So first, let's think about letter forms like we would think about the human body. The letter form actually does have parts. It has arms and legs and ears and etc. It really does. So let's talk about some of this. So first of all, letters, of course, are meant to form words. In order to make letters read better, we set them along what's known as a baseline. The baseline, of course, being the line that follows the base of the letters. The x height is determined by the height of the lowercase x. And all other lowercase letter forms you'll see actually adhere to this height. If you look closely, however, and I don't know if the video really shows this, but there is a creep or a pop out here of the E. See how the E and the G tend to extend? There are parts that extend beyond the x height. And that's because for optical weight, for optical balance, flat letter forms, you'll see, actually fall right on the x height. Okay? Whereas the round letter forms will extend or shoot above and below, okay, the baseline in a very small way. You can barely see it there, but it does. And this is so that they optically balance against their more square or flatter counterparts. And that way it actually appears optically that this line is straight. And that's just something to pay attention to and to think about. So of course we have the cap height, okay, and that does not include the ascender. It's actually the height of the capital letter. There are some ascenders that actually do extend above the cap height. This is actually an ascender, as you can see. Extends above the x height, the baseline as I described, and the ascender line, which is above the cap line. A descender, of course, the descender line, which is the extent, okay, of the actual letter form. Now before, obviously, we see the crossbar, but I wanted to make a note. The point size is actually determined by from the bottom of the descender to a point above the highest ascender. And this is usually, from the top of the highest ascender to the bottom of the lowest descender is usually the point size of a font. And so you can see how that might, or you can imagine how that might affect the point size and actual size, that those would differ. So you've probably noticed that some serif typefaces appear to be different sizes. And that's usually because we say the x height of that letter form is either larger or smaller than that of another. And what it's really saying is that the ascenders or descenders are either taller or shorter, okay? So either way, it's the same difference. But the point is that either the ascenders and descenders are very short, which would result in a larger x height, okay, or that they're longer, resulting in a smaller x height. And that is what determines the visual weight and legibility of a font. Some typefaces reduce very well because they have very large x heights. And so they can shrink more because they have more space to shrink, see? So we know about serifs, and just so you know, these little rounded portions of the serif are known as brackets, okay, which I think I'll show you later. There's the I, the cross stroke, not to be confused with the crossbar. Remember, the cross stroke goes across a stroke. The crossbar goes between two strokes. The bowl of the old style G, the link of the old style G, and the loop of the old style G, the link and the loop. The loop actually does include this portion all the way up to this point here, just to be clear. We talked about brackets already, but those are brackets. Just like a shelf has brackets, type serifs have brackets. Some of them are called bracketed serifs. Others that are unbracketed serifs, like in many slab serif typefaces, have no bracket. The serif merely comes straight out from the stroke. Okay. This is the leg of the K, and this part right here is known as the crotch, just so you know. This is a teardrop terminal. There are many different shapes of terminals. That just happens to be a teardrop terminal. This is a beak. Sometimes this C doesn't have one, but uppercase C sometimes will have a beak as well. It's a slightly elongated serif at the tip here. It is a form of a serif. Okay. And that concludes sort of the review of anatomy of type. We don't need to go into a lot of detail and really hammer you on this. We're going to be going into a lot of depth in the 230 class, the one that actually follows this 130 experience. So I'd like to take a moment to show you different examples of typography. And I want to show you this because I think it's important to take notice while I'm walking through these various examples and have you pay attention to the fonts that are being used. Notice the type isn't actually very decorative. Did you see how it's very standard? Okay, is a word we could use. It's not a display face. It doesn't have a lot of ornamentation. Most of it is very straightforward. I want you to pay attention to the fonts that are seen in the examples shown today. Look how beautiful these are. Look at the alignment, the scale, right? Small, medium, large, okay? The scale here, dominant, subordinate, the negative and positive spaces, the way we create depth. All of this, the alignment of the edge of that T, all of these things are really important. When we to understand typography, we have to be able to see how the principles of design work with typography. Notice the alignment here. Now it reflects the alignment here, right? So this alignment and this alignment reflects this alignment, you see. Those Armin Hoffman. Here's some increased size to show you that alignment point. Isn't that beautiful? All of this makes for an amazing piece of design. Lost and found, overlapping, figure ground ambiguity. There's a sense of understanding of the principles in these pieces. Again, Emil Reuter, we're talking about alignment in a big way. Nothing is arbitrarily placed. You see there's a relationship established between various parts. Notice that things are all left justified. They repeat that left justification. The whole piece, you don't see centered type, then left justified type, and it's arranged all over the place. No, it's arranged according to a grid, right? The invisible structure upon which we build. You can see it. You can see the shapes and how they point to different parts, the focal point, right? Wolfgang Weingart was actually known as the sort of founder of Swiss punk typography. He doesn't like that, apparently, according to his interviews. He's not too keen on being called the founder of Swiss punk as a style. He doesn't think he has a style. I think he's pretty, styled as an individual, but you make your own call. He's a fun guy, love him. His work's interesting too. Very, very experimental. Really looking at letter forms for what they are, and that is shape. To really understand typography, to really be able to use typography, one must recognize that all type is merely shape. It is circles, rectangles, and triangles in some cases, right? Triangles. Okay, you see it. It's very simple. Circles, rectangles, circles, triangles, right? That's all typography is, at least our Roman typography. And very few exceptions, really, beyond that. Okay, we have Wilhelm Sandberg. There's some work. Look at the expressive nature, breaking the grid, but aligning this element with his name, introducing these elements, building his name from various symbols. This is part of his communication strategy. Beautiful. Scale, small, medium, large. Look at the relationship between elements on the page. All left justified. There's a poetic quality to these, but they're still aligned. There's a clear alignment, a clear structure, a clear purpose and reason. If you didn't already see it, this says life, L-I-F-E, okay? And so ignore the blue, look at the white as if it were solid, and the blue is a cutout, and you'll see the word life. If you don't see that, this is kind of a test to see if you can see negative space. If you didn't see life right away, it's because you're not noticing the negative space. But now you probably can see it and can't see anything else. There he is, William Sandberg.